I'm Tiffany with Hilltop Tulips, and I have my lovely assistant here, Elizabeth. Do you want to tell them what we're making?
Yes. What are we making? Apple butter? And apple jelly?
We're going to be making apple butter and apple jelly today. Apples are probably my favorite thing to process. I really like doing tomatoes too, but with apples there's like little to no waste. You use most of it, and we get 2 products out of 1 batch. So we are going to make apple butter and apple jelly at the same time. It takes a boatload of sugar. So if sugar offends you, click away, because it's a lot, like a lot. Click away. So first step, I used to do this in a pan on the stove or pot on the stove, but now my best buddy here, the Instant Pot, takes the place of everything. So we're gonna actually process our apples in the Instant Pot, and I have a fun little gadget that I'm going to show you guys later that makes it to where we don't even have to peel or core the apples. There's actually a lot of pectin naturally in apples, so it's best to leave the skin and everything on. It's going to help it be thicker and set up better, and you get more nutrients and flavor. Exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and get to cutting. I'll show you guys how I cut these up, and it's a really rough chop. Like, I've had some small ones kind of like this where I just half them. You don't even have to really cut them any certain way. You don't have to take the stems and stuff off unless you want to. So we'll just go ahead, and after I cut them, I'm going to let you throw them in. Okay. But you have to wait until I'm not cutting. And just to be able to stick more in the Just to be able to stick more in the Instant Pot, I'm going to cut them a little more. Go ahead. Alright, y'all, so we got our apples all cut up, and now it's time to get the Instant Pot started. So to do that, we've got to put our water in. Now we have to determine how much water we need. To make apple butter, you're not going to get it exactly the same every time. There might be slight variations, just because you can't use an exact recipe every time. You might use 3 cups of sugar this time, or 2 cups next time, or 4 cups the next time. It's going to depend on your apple. It depends on how it tastes, and that is going to vary. If you go to the store tonight and buy Honeycrisp apples and you love them, and you go back 2 weeks from now, buy Honeycrisp apples again. They're still going to taste good. They're still going to have the flavor of a Honeycrisp apple, but they're going to be a little bit different. The water content might be different. The amount of sugar might be different. It's going to depend on the maturity of the tree, the maturity of the apple when it was picked, when the last time it rained. There's all kinds of variables that change the way an apple tastes. So you really have to taste it to see how much of each thing you're going to need in your recipe. So my recipe ingredients themselves don't change every time, but the amount of each thing that I use changes. So let's go ahead and try these apples, and we're going to see how juicy they are. If they're super juicy, then we might not need to add our full 4 cups of water. If they're a little more dry and starchy, which happens, then we're going to use the full cup, or then we'll know when it comes time to add our sugar. If these were really sweet apples, then we're going to add a little bit less, or if they were kind of starchy and not as sweet, then we'll go ahead and start with the 3 cups. Like I said, if you don't like sugar, look away. So let's go ahead and taste our apple. Here, you want one? Yeah. Good catch. Let me taste it.
Nice.
Good.
Sweet. Now we don't have to add our water.
It is a really juicy apple, but I need enough liquid to make my apple jelly. So I don't think I'm going to use the full 4 cups. I think I'm going to do maybe 2 cups. I think that's, yeah, that was a bad spot. You can't eat that. These are my scraps. We got plenty more. This baby loves apples. She's just like me. My kitchen, in case you haven't noticed, is decorated in apples. I love apples. Alright, so let's go ahead and get our water in here. This is heavy. Okay. We're going to pour the whole thing. Girl, you splashing. Okay. What we got? Yep, we got about 2 cups. Here, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and use that towel. We're done with it. All right, let's trade spots. All right, traded places.
Yep.
Got our little spill all wiped up. I think we still got about 2 cups of water in there. So let's get our lid on. Now it's locked. I'm gonna turn it to sealing because I always forget that part. And we're gonna process these in our Instant Pot on high pressure for 25 minutes. Now that seems like a long time, but we're going to put them through a version of a food mill and turn it into apple butter, so you're not going to overcook them. So this is so different backwards. Manual. Up to 25. All right, while our apples are cooking, maybe loud, I'm going to go ahead and fill up my water bath canner. A water bath canner is basically just a giant pot. You can do this with a regular pot if you have one big enough. And then I have my old trusty rusty rack that goes down inside, and there's a lid with it. So we're going to get this filled up about halfway and get it on the stove and start getting the water up to boiling. You know how they say a watched pot never boils? Well, when you have a bunch of jars of apple butter and apple jelly filled and you didn't start this thing on time, oh my gosh, it seems like it takes forever. This is a big pot of water to get boiling. So we're going to go ahead and get it started while we're waiting on these guys to cook. Alright, so we have our apples cooking. We have our water bath canner about between half and 2/3 of the way full of water. So now we're going to start getting my favorite gadget ready. So we used to process apples, tomatoes, things like that in a little food mill like this. You put the cooked fruit, vegetable, whatever it is in here, turn the little thing, and it'll push it through these little holes on the bottom. These are kind of a pain, especially to get clean, and I just have something that I like better. So let me show you. This is the Cucina Pro, something, I don't know how to say it, but I saw this on a Living Traditions homestead video. She processed her tomatoes in this, and I was like, that is amazing, I have to have one. So I bought one. It was like between 20 and 25 bucks. So, and I've used it so many times, and it saved me so much time that it's definitely worth every penny. So I was going to go ahead and set it up before we started the video, but I figured why not show you guys how to put this guy together. It's not complicated at all. There's only one part that is kind of difficult. So we will go ahead and put everything out.
Yep.
So here's all the stuff that it comes with. I don't ever use this thing. It's like super lightweight and cheap. I don't even know, like, it's not built like the rest of everything. It don't even seem like it should go with it, but I don't use this. So let's go ahead and get our gadgets together. First thing, I guess, we can put, this is the hard part, I struggle with this. Sliding this thing into here, that's all. Why do I struggle? Alright, got that on. This thing suction cups it to the counter when you're ready. Then this goes in last. So your next step is going to be to put this part together. And I was saying this is the only part that might be slightly complicated for you. This right here acts like the bottom of that food mill. But it comes apart, so it's way easier to clean. You're going to take your little spring and put these white pieces into each end of the spring, and then the little white pieces are going to nestle down inside each other. You will squeeze them together a little bit and then slide them down into your part right there. So it's put together. Then you got your little cap. There we go. Okay. Now this just drops down inside of here, and you're going to point the hole. See, this end is capped. You're going to point the hole towards this side, because this is where the handle goes in. That's going to turn this and make these little sides flex in and out, and that's what's going to push the apples through the strainer. So just drop him down in there, put your handle in. We're going to start turning it, and it's going to screw into that white piece there, and then it catches it, and you can hear the little flaps. We did have it splash just a little bit when we did tomatoes, but I've never really had that issue with if you go slow, you don't really have that, and I've never had it with apples. So and then this part, this is where your apples come out down here, and this part just slides in to act like a funnel. I'm going to lift it up real quick and move it. And then it comes with this little tray. I have to empty this tray out several times when I'm making anything, really, because it only holds a certain amount. So if I had any kind of negative point to a review for this thing, it's going to be I wish it set up a little taller so I could get a pot under there and just crank this stuff into a pot instead of cranking it into this little bin and dumping it off into a pot. So our apples, we're still waiting for them to get up to pressure. We're going to let the apples cook, the water boil, have all our spices and sugar and everything ready to go, and we'll be right back with you guys. Alright, y'all, we're back, and our apples are done. I went ahead and let the pressure out of the pot, so we're going to open it now. It smells like apples. Okay. Now, we need, for our apple jelly, we're going to need 5 cups of this liquid in here. You we got plenty. Okay. I'm just gonna stir everything up, and then I'm gonna use my ladle to just push down and try to get as much just regular juice as I can. And I'm gonna bring this closer and put this through our strainer. There are other options for straining this liquid out of the apples. There is like a fabric bag, almost like cheesecloth, that hooks onto a little ring, and you would just let it drip like that. But I find this to be the easiest way and quickest way. I'm not necessarily patient enough to wait for it to drip through that bag. I prefer doing it this way through my strainer. And I do move it around a little bit. You're going to get a little bit of pulp down in your juice, but that's totally fine. Now, I was saying before, apples have a lot of natural pectin in them. That is what makes your jellies and your jams and stuff set up into like a thick gel. Without pectin, it's still going to be like a fruit spread. It's just not going to be a jelly per se. So I prefer Certo liquid pectin when I make my berry jams, like strawberry, blueberry, blackberry, things like that, because I find that this box of powdered Sure-Gel, I need two to make it set like I want it to set, like a jelly, and not be just a regular fruit spread or a syrup type consistency. To really get it to gel, I need 2 boxes of this, but with the Certo, I can use just 1 pouch of the liquid pectin. But with apples, because they naturally have so much pectin already in them, I'm fine using just 1 box of this. And I don't know if you were aware of the great canning supply shortage of 2020, but this was all I could find in the store anyway, so we would be making do with this anyway. I'm just going to keep straining. And once your strainer gets a little full, you can just take this stuff out and throw it back in. We're not quite up to 4 cups yet, are we? No. Okay. So when this gets to 4 cups, I'm going to pour it over into here and then get 1 more cup out, and then we will start processing the apples for the apple butter. Now, if you don't get exactly 5 cups, get as much as you can, and then you can top it off with water, as long as it's not, out of the 5 cups, you don't want to do more than a cup of water, because you still want that good apple flavor. Okay, so this is 4 cups. We're just going to keep straining to get that last cup out. I believe I have it. I don't think I'm going to need to use any water. And this is also good to do because skimming off as much of the liquid as you can is going to help your apple butter get thicker quicker. Thicker quicker. I could be a rapper. Alright, we got another cup right in. Let's see if I can get just a little more to top it off. Alright. Okay. Yep. So we're going to go ahead and set this to the side until we're ready to make the jelly. And we're gonna start processing our apples now. Okay, so we have our Cucina Pro food mill put together, locked down. We've got our reservoir here to catch the apples after they're processed, and this is what we're going to dump the apples out of here into. We need something to catch the leftovers. This fit. Pretty much. Okay, I'm just going to put this little plastic container under here. Whenever it separates the applesauce type consistency apples that we want to use in our apple butter, it's going to come out here, and then all the seeds and peelings and stems and things like that are going to come out this little chute over here. So you need something up under there to catch it. It didn't come with anything, so I'm just using an old to-go container to do that. So let's get started. I always make a mess during this part. Let's see. Gonna get you some apples in there, and then we're gonna start turning. And it's sending all this pulp out over here, and then down here you can see the applesauce falling out. Sounds beautiful too, doesn't it? Alright, so we got everything out of there. So this doesn't drip while we're separating it. Okay, so here's our applesauce. Now we're going to keep processing. And I do put my pulp through more than once as well. So now that this has gotten a little low, I'm just going to stick this back in here. And process that one more time. Okay, so out of all those apples that we started with, this is what's left. Everything else is either cooked down and in this pot ready to be turned into apple butter, or it's been strained out as juice. So that's all the waste we have. We are going to get this guy broken down and rinsed off and cleaned up. It's best if you do that pretty quickly. Alright, so these apples actually cooked down a lot. I don't know if you can see how much I have in here, but it's not a ton. So we are actually just going to start with a cup of sugar. Like I said, your recipe is going to depend on how you like to taste it, how sweet your apples are, and it's going to be up to you from there. So I'm going to start with 1 cup of sugar. That was a 1/3 cup measuring cup. And then the seasonings or spices, I believe you would call it. The spices that I always use are up here. Let me get my measuring spoon. I just had it. That's not it. Okay, the spices that I always use are my ground cloves, ground ginger, nutmeg, and cinnamon. So for the, I got rust on my hand. For the ground ginger, I'm going to, because this is a small batch, I'm just going to do a 1/2 teaspoon. Roughly. Okay. And then for the nutmeg, I'm also going to do 1/2 teaspoon. I don't like a whole ton of either one of those things, but it's the combination of seasonings. I've never actually been like, oh, I taste the ginger in this, but the way it mixes with everything else is what's going to give you that awesome flavor. Now cloves, I'm a little more heavy-handed with my cloves because I like my apple butter dark and mysterious. So we're going to start with 1 teaspoon. And I'm going to stir it and see how I like it. Definitely 2 teaspoons to start with. Okay. Like I said, I like a lot of cloves in mine. Patera with Appalachia's Homestead puts red hots in hers. I would have never thought of that. It's a version of cinnamon, I guess. So, you know. So for my cinnamon, I also like a lot of that. So that's going to be 1/2, 1/2, 2, 1/2, 3. Okay. I got 3 teaspoons of that to start with. So I'm going to give it a stir. Don't know why I'm still stirring with my ladle. I like the color. It's a nice light color. Apple butter sometimes is really dark, sometimes it's lighter. My dad actually prefers this lighter apple butter. He prefers the flavor of Golden Delicious apples. That's the kind of apples that we used. He likes that. I've never met an apple I don't like, so if he has a preference, he gets me the apples and I will make it however he likes it. Okay, let me taste this. Now when you want to taste it, you don't want to stick this in there, put it in your mouth, stick it back in there, put it in your mouth. You want to try to be sterile when you're canning things, when you're processing things to go sit on the shelf. You want to try to keep it as sterile as possible. Yeah, that's a really pretty color. That is perfect. Yep, I'm not going to do anything else to it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fill our jars. Our jars are warm but not hot, but then our apple butter is warm but not boiling. So you want to keep the temperatures about the same. You don't want cold jars and then put your boiling hot apple butter in it, or you could definitely have a jar crack. You don't have to boil and sanitize your jars anymore. Ball doesn't require that. When you put them in the water bath canner to can, that is going to sanitize them, but you do want to make sure you wash them with hot soapy water, and then check around the rim of each jar, which I've already done, and make sure that you don't feel any cracks or any irregularities, because that will keep your lids from sealing. Ball used to say to boil and keep these in simmering water, your lids and your rings, and that's no longer required or even recommended. So also wash these with warm soapy water when you're washing your jars, your lids and your rings, and you're good to go. Now we are going to go ahead and fill our jars up, and this is a Cannon funnel. Super handy. I make a mess without one. I don't ever recommend anyone try to can without one. Okay. Okay. Now this is going to be I call it a bubble popper. I'm sure it has an actual name, but you're just gonna push this down into your jar to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles, because that will keep it from correctly processing. So, and then you want to make sure you have about a 1/4 inch head space, and that also, this measures your head space as well. And we have a little bit more, so I'm going to put just a drop. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and finish filling these jars up. Okay, so we have 3 jars. Now, if the last jar didn't get completely full to where you had just the 1/4 inch of quarter inch head space, then you would need to just put that in your fridge and go ahead and use it. Don't waste one of your lids either. Just put an old lid on it, or like even a mayonnaise jar lid or something like that. Put that on it and put it in the fridge, and go ahead and use that one first. Don't worry about processing it, because it wouldn't be safely processed if it didn't have the correct amount of headspace. So we are going to take a clean towel and go along the edges and the rim of each jar. You want to make sure that it's completely clean, and it gets messy filling sometimes, so make sure that it is completely clean. And you can dab a little apple cider vinegar on your towel too, to help make sure it's not sticky. If you have anything in between the jar and the lid, it's not going to seal properly, or you risk it not sealing properly or having a failed seal later. So then you're going to put your cap lids on, and then your rings. you're going to put on, and you just want them to be finger tight. So however you get them with just this, you don't want to grab it with your palm and turn it really hard and lock it down, because the canning process pushes all the air out of these jars and creates a vacuum seal. That's why it's safe to put in your cabinet. But if you seal that down really hard, then it's not going to be able to push that air out, and you risk cracking your jar or having a lot of siphoning. It's called siphoning. When the food inside the jar comes out, then your jar's not going to seal. You got food floating around in your water. It's a mess. So just make sure you only put them on finger tight. Okay, these are ready to be processed. We are going to make our jelly first. We're still getting our water bath canner. I turned it down to medium heat since the apples were taking a while to get up to pressure. So we're going to crank that back up on high and get our pot ready and go ahead and make our jelly. Okay, we have our 5 cups of our strained apple juice in here. We're going to bring this up to a boil. And then I went ahead and measured out my sugar. You want to measure that in a bowl separate. I'm going to show you guys. It's a crazy amount of sugar. You want to measure that in a bowl separate because, like, for example, I lost count a couple of times. And you don't want to do that when you're putting it into this. It's better to lose count in that bowl and have to pour it back in your container and start measuring again, than to pour it in here when you can't start over. So we have 5 cups of juice and 7 cups of sugar. Jelly's not good for you. So I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and then we will get our sugar in there, and then we will worry about adding the pectin. Okay, we've got our apple juice up to a good rolling boil, so I'm going to pour in all the sugar. We're going to get that mixed in. Now I know when we started, it looked like we just had a tiny bit of liquid in the bottom of the pot. This seemed like a really big pot for the amount of juice that we had, but now that the sugar's added, that's more than doubled it. And then once it starts boiling, you're going to be happy that you had that extra room. So don't go with a smaller pot thinking that you only need to fit that 5 cups of juice. You need room for it to boil and bubble safely. So use a big old pot like I got here. So we're just going to keep this moving. You don't want anything to burn. We're getting it up to a boil, and we're going to let that go for a little while, and then we will add our pectin. Now you want to get it to this rolling boil. That means that when you vigorously stir it, the boiling doesn't stop. So it's up to a rolling boil now, and y'all can see how it's getting a little taller on us. We're going to keep stirring so nothing burns, and we're going to let it boil like this for about a minute before we add our pectin in. Alright, we're going to go ahead now and sprinkle in our pack of pectin. And that is going to slow the boil down a lot. But we still need to let that process now at a rolling boil for another full minute. With other jams and jellies, you may have issues with these bubbles on the top once you fill your jars. I haven't had the issue with my apple jelly, so I don't use it, but you can put a teaspoon of butter in here, and that will help with the with the bubbles not forming as bad. But like I said, I don't really have it once the jars are filled with my apple jelly, so I'm not going to put the butter in on this one. You can also, if you do get some bubbles and that bothers you, you could just skim them off on top. I entered peach jelly last year in our local agriculture fair, and I won first place. So I have prize winning jelly now. But you don't have to, if it's just for your personal use, you don't have to worry about skimming off the bubbles. It's just an aesthetic thing. Some people just don't like the way they look. It doesn't affect the safety of the canned product or the taste of your jelly or anything like that. So this has been boiling for a minute. I went ahead and turned the heat off, and I'm just going to keep stirring it until the boiling has stopped. And what you can do also with other jellies, I don't do it so much with my apple because, like I said before, it has a lot of natural pectin in it, so I've never had trouble with it setting up. But if you're concerned about whether or not it's going to set, there is a test you can do where you put like a frozen, or you put like a saucer or like a small plate or even spoons in the freezer and let them get, before you start anything, you would put those in the freezer, and once they are like frozen, you can take a little spoonful and put it on there, and it cools it so fast it shows you whether or not it's going to gel properly or not. But like with the apple jelly, you can already see it on the sides setting up and on the spoon, so we know that it's going to gel properly. Alright, so now that the boiling has stopped, we're going to go ahead and fill our jars. Okay, we have our nice warm and toasty jars here, and our hot apple jelly. So we're going to go ahead and fill our jars. We're going to use the same 1/4 inch headspace for these as we did for our apple butter. Alright, so we do have a little bit left. My kids will be excited because that means this is going in the fridge to get used immediately. Alright, so we'll set that guy to the side. Go ahead and get all our dishes over here. Didn't need these. So now we have to clean our rims. Grabbed another clean towel. We're just going to go around the edge. These are hot. And then around the top. This is super sticky, so I'm going to grab some apple cider vinegar. I'm going to throw our lids on. And our rings. And get those just finger tight. You know what? I don't know why these rings are acting weird. There we go, that one was good. There we go. Okay. So our water bath canner back here is boiling. So we're going to go ahead and remove the lid. Face it away from you, there's steam. We're going to Stick our canner. It has these little hooks so it can go on the side. Our cannon rack. We're going to use our jar grabbers. And we're going to stick these in alternating across so it doesn't get uneven on one side. The first couple are the hardest to get to balance, and after that it's not hard. We're going to get our apple butter. And my canner will easily hold those 6. You can put another one down in the middle, but I've never done that. I usually just do the 6. Sorry. And then we're going to lower it down into the water. And you want at least 2 to 3 inches of water covering. And mine is still boiling really good. So we're just going to throw that lid on. Sometimes you need to let it get back up to a boil after you put all your jars in. It depends on how quick you get them in there. So I have read before, some people say 5 minutes processing, some say 10. It does depend on whether you're using pints or quarts. Definitely check your recipe and check with the NCHFP.org, National Center for Home Food Preservation, or ball.com. So those are the 2 trusted sites for safe canning recipes. I process my pints of apples for 10 minutes. And I can hear it's at a really strong rolling boil, so I'm going to put my timer on for 10 minutes. And then after that, we will come right back and turn the heat off of the canner and open it up. And some people prefer to let their jars sit in the canner and let the temperature come down naturally that way. If you have time to do that, that's totally fine. If not, we are going to pull ours out and stick them on a clean towel. So I'm going to go grab one of those now. Alright, our timers went off, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat off. This pot is really tall, and I'm really short. I'm only 5 foot, and I got short arms. So I'm going to use my tongs. There we go. So we got that turned off. I'm going to take my lid off. Lift it up away from you so you don't burn yourself with the steam. That would be terrible. So we're going to let the boiling stop and let the temperature come down on that a little bit. And just wanted to talk to you guys really quick about this little doohickey. If you are somehow able to find a canning kit right now, it's probably going to come with a jar grabber, the bubble popper, which is definitely not headspace measurer, probably not actually called either one of those things, but that's what I call it. That's what it's used for. And one of these guys. This is actually a magnet on the end, and it used to be used to pick your lids and rings up out of boiling water, because it used to be suggested to boil your rings and your lids and keep them in simmering water and then put them on your jars that way. That's no longer recommended or even suggested. So you don't absolutely need this guy anymore. I don't know what you'd use it for. You don't need it in canning because you don't have to boil your lids anymore. So if you get a canning kit and don't know what this thing is for, don't worry about it. You don't really need it. It is a cool little magnet, so I don't know if you sew, keep it to find sewing needles that you might drop or something like that. I don't know. But you don't need it for canning. So the rolling boil has stopped. We're going to go ahead and start pulling things out. And you're going to lift it straight up. As tempting as it is, don't tilt it Just lift it straight up and then over to your towel. And I hope you guys get to hear a ping. We're gonna wait and hope that we hear a ping. When your jar seals and the lid pops down, it makes a little ping sound. It's beautiful. Sometimes they happen right away and sometimes they don't happen for a couple hours. You want to leave about 1 inch in between. You want them to have decent airflow around them. So don't sit them right on top of each other. Oh, that was a ping. That means you have a successful seal for right now. It was this one. So seals can fail. You have to give these at least 18 to 24 hours. Don't move them. Don't touch them. Don't take the rings off yet. Just put them on this towel and leave them alone for 18 to 24 hours. So also think about that when you're pulling them out of your canner. Where is somewhere that you can leave them for 18 to 24 hours. All right, these guys look awesome. You can see we got a really good color on our apple butter. The apple jelly has some pieces of apple in it, a little bit, just enough to give it some body. So I'm really happy with how these look. We're gonna wait on everything to seal up and we will be able to gift these or just enjoy these ourselves. So your canned items are good in your pantry for a very long time, for several years, even after like maybe 3, 4, 5 years. It's not going to be unsafe. It's just as long as your seal is correct, the lid is still sealed on there, you're just going to start losing quality. It's not necessarily going to be bad. It wouldn't make you sick or anything at that point, but it might not be an awesome texture. There's another ping. Might not be an awesome texture. Color might start changing, things like that. But as long as your lid stays sealed with no ring on it, then you're good to go for several years. They won't last that long. Hopefully not anyway. We try to turn over at least every year. I haven't made enough of anything yet to last us for a full year. But that would be our ideal. If I was able to can enough for a year, we want to use it within that year and then be ready to can the next batch once the next harvest starts coming in. When you store your canned items, after the 18 to 24 hours is up, you're going to take these rims off and you're going to store them with no rim on. Don't stack anything on top of them. You want this lid completely free. That way, if your seal fails at any point while it's in storage, you will be able to tell and you won't possibly accidentally eat any tainted food. Also, when I get it out of storage, when I go to pick it up, I'll lift it by the lid. That way I know that the seal is still really strong. If I lift it by the lid and it came off, then I'm not going to eat that item because that means you have a failed seal. It's another pop. I think have they all popped now? I think we're waiting on one more, this guy, but I'm sure that he will seal. So store your jars without the rims on. They'll last for several years, but this stuff's going to be so good, you're not going to keep it that long anyway. So thank you guys for spending all this time with me. Let me know in the comments down below if you like to can, what you like to can, and if you would like to see me can anything else in the near future. I would love any of those comments or suggestions down below. Y'all have a great day.